that is likely 6 out of 10 for Joe Biden in a lot of these states. Donald Trump, however, is leading, according to our analysis, on the day of vote, which comes in over the night. So you're going to see this probability meter shift throughout the night. Right now it's at 59%. In the raw vote total, Joe Biden is leading at 56%. We're going to see that through the night. Chris, you had something on Jordan.
Just looking at our voter profile analysis, which is a poll that was taken, an exhaustive poll, 100,000 people across the country in Georgia, and I think that's going to be true in a lot of states. If Joe Biden is elected president, it's going to be on the basis of women. There is a big gender gap. Women in Georgia, 56 to 42, Biden over Trump. On the general question of the country, this is always a very telling one, especially for an incumbent running for re-election. Would you say the country is right, going in the right direction or the wrong direction? 61 to 39, wrong direction or the right direction. And then finally, which is the most important issue facing the country? If you think the economy is the key issue, 77 to 20 for Trump. If you think the coronavirus is the key issue, 72-26 for Biden, the difference is 39% think the coronavirus is the most important issue. 26% in Georgia think the economy is the issue. So we don't know how it's going to turn out, but you look at the internals of these polls, and you can certainly see a potential path to victory in Georgia for Biden.
We've got to hit a break, Chris, but we'll go
real quick. Just looking at the percentage of men and women voters. Georgia is good suggested women, 53% of the electorate, men 46, Virginia 54, 46 women, South Carolina 51, 45 women, Indiana 52, 47 women. So they are across the country, they are the largest cohort of voters. That's going to tell us something about the outcome because women have had a lot of trouble.
Stand by.
So live look as the polls are about to close just outside Cleveland, Ohio. We are about to get our first look at numbers coming out of that state, as well as North Carolina and West Virginia. More straight ahead from Fox News headquarters and Democracy 2020, the presidential election.
Before Home Chef, we never really had a dinner routine.
I used to do all of the planning, all of the grocery shopping, and the cooking. I was really excited when we got our first Home Chef box and was able to open it up and have fresh ingredients ready to cook.
Home Chef has had a lot of variety to our dinner. I've experienced with salmon, steak, chicken, something from Nordeva.
We have a recipe cards. We have our ingredients already to go. So it's really helped smooth the process.
It makes everything a lot better out there.
Patient with belly pain, straining, and bloating again and again.
No way.
More exercise, more water, and more fiber is the only way to manage it.
Is it?
Maybe you think it's occasional constipation.
Maybe it's not.
It could be a chronic medical condition called IBS-C. And time to say yes to Linzess. Linzess works differently than laxatives. It helps relieve belly pain and lets you have more frequent and complete bowel movements. Do not give Linzess to children less than 6, and it should not be given to children 6 to less than 18. It may harm them. Do not take Linzess if you have a bowel blockage. It may help if you develop unusual or severe stomach pain, especially with bloody or black stools. The most common side effect is diarrhea, sometimes severe. If it's severe, stop taking Linzess and call your doctor right away. Other side effects include gas, stomach area pain, and swelling. Change your thinking to IBS-C. If your constipation and belly pain keeps coming back, tell your doctor and say yes to Linzess.
Zach?
You mean Jack?
Hey, Ellen.
Hey!
Your name?
Tim, at the Cincinnati Insurance Companies, we know how hard you work to make a name for yourself.
Jack.
That's why we operate on first name, first priority.
Hey, Beth.
First to be there for you basis. Because your name is what you stand for.
Tim. See you.
And at Cincinnati Insurance, we stand for you.
When you can't watch, listen. Get the latest news, business, and news headlines on SiriusXM. Anytime, anywhere. Fox News Audio on SiriusXM. America is listening.
Welcome back to Fox News coverage of the 2020 election. We've made some calls tonight. The vote totals are coming in. A lot of the states have the early vote coming first. You can see on the bottom of the screen the percentage that you see on the screen, precincts in, and that's how that vote total is tabulated as it comes in.
couple minutes, we're going to start to get a look at North Carolina and Ohio as well. Obviously, two very important states that both sides really need to secure tonight. There's been a lot of time in both of them. Joe Biden and President Trump trying to win over voters. We're getting some interesting indications here in some of these states in terms of the way that women and men are breaking down. And, last time around, President Trump won with white women against Hillary Clinton. In the early states that we're looking at some of these breakdowns in, that's not the case with some of them tonight.
Right. It's important to note that it's the voter survey that we've taken around the country, and it gives you a snapshot of where people are. But as the real vote total populates, that's where our decision desk makes the calls. They're not going to make a call unless they feel certain that a state's going to go one way or another. We saw that in Virginia. There's not a lot of voting in. However, where the vote is, and our voter analysis survey gave them the ability to call Virginia for Joe Biden. Seconds away from the next poll closing here on the East Coast. It is 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, which means polls have just closed in 3 more states, including 2 considered must-wins for President Trump's re-election. First and foremost, Ohio, the biggest prize of the hour. 18 electoral votes that frankly are considered more crucial to President Trump than Joe Biden as far as getting to 270. Candidates locked in a tight race in the Buckeye State. Fox News decision desk will need a lot of time probably to analyze more voting data before declaring a winner there.
However, it's not too early to project that President Trump will easily defeat Joe Biden in the state of West Virginia, one of the most pro-Trump states in America, so no big surprise there tonight.
Also in West Virginia, the Fox News decision desk can now project that Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito will turn back a challenge from Democrat Paula Jean Swing.
North Carolina polls were set to close at 7:30, but they are going to remain open in a handful of counties until 8:15. We'll get you an update on the crucial presidential and Senate races there as soon as we can. Some delays that kicked in North Carolina, which we heard about a bit earlier in the night. So nothing alarming there, but they got a late start.
Machines in some of the precincts did not work, and they had to kind of start late, so they're going to finish late, 45 minutes. There you see the race to 270, 16 to 13. We've got a long way to go. Bill Hemmer is back with a look at where we stand tonight so far and what you're watching, Bill, at the billboard.
It is early. Brett, Martha, good evening again. We can't show you, however, here in the Southeast. There is data here in Georgia and data here in Florida. To our viewers at home, sometimes this data pops up in real time, so you're going to be seeing it at home at the same time we see it here. So this is live on the air mathematics, okay? Down here in Florida, here's what we have. 63% of the votes now reporting. By the way, the Panhandle's open until 8 o'clock, so another 48 minutes on the clock until polls close there. But East Coast time here, 7 o'clock, Joe Biden with a slim percentage lead here. Remember, we talked about 7 million votes cast early in the state of Florida. They've tabulated about 7 million on this map here as well. So come on down here. We'll look at Miami. We'll look at Tampa, and up here in Jacksonville. This is Miami. We've been told the president was doing better in this county based on Hispanic voters and African American. That appears to be the case. The reason I say that, at 54-45, favored Joe Biden. Just go back 4 years ago and see what the comparison was. Here we were in 2016. Hillary Clinton won the county with 65% of the votes. So Donald Trump clearly is in the battle here in Miami. Come back to 2020. I'll pop out here. Just come up here to this is Hillsborough County. This is Tampa. A fair amount of votes in, about 500,000 votes here. Joe Biden with a 12-point lead on Donald Trump. Why is that? How does that rate with 4 years ago? Pop back here to 2016. Hillary Clinton won the county. Again, the vote totals are very similar right now. So they might be getting very close to maybe 90% or plus of the total vote in Hillsborough County. She had 53.5% of the vote. Joe Biden at the moment is doing slightly better than Hillary Clinton at 55.4%. So we'll watch that. The other thing I saw up here, this is Jacksonville, Duval County. Joe Biden here with the lead over Donald Trump. I was watching this a moment ago during the commercial. This is razor tight 4 years ago. We'll see how this breaks down. Again, more votes to be counted in Jackson. Did you see that right? Oh, there it is. Just then, that county right there from 2016 was red. Pop up here to Georgia. We talked about the counties to watch east of the Mississippi River. I know Brett and Martha, we've talked about this before. This is Atlanta right here in the surrounding counties. This is Fulton County, sort of this bottle shape here. This is Cobb County. The reason I'm focused on that is because there are suburban voters there, white voters, some African American too. It's going to get a measure as to whether or not Donald Trump is hurting the suburban voters. There's only about half of the voting here in Cobb County, Georgia, for 2016. It was pretty close. You know, Hillary Clinton about 2.5 votes there. So we'll see whether or not the president can cut that gap and cut that margin here throughout the night. You guys also mentioned that Ohio closed a moment ago. Me too. Go to the Buckeye State. We'll see what's happening there. Well, that's what you got. All right, there's not a lot of data coming in from Ohio. Part of the reason that could be state law allows this total advance early 3.4 million early votes cast, but they could not start processing them in Ohio until today. And right now they're doing the tabulation. We are told in Ohio that the first vote that will be given to us will be the in-person vote as of today. And then after that, we'll see the ballots that were cast prior to Election Day. A lot of these states, they have different laws, they have different rules, and we'll bounce around and we'll follow the law as best as we can here. I just come over here to Kentucky. The reason I would do this only is because northern Kentucky here, it borders the Ohio River with Cincinnati. So let's see what's happening here in counties like Boone County. Right now, the president's 66%. Hop on over here to the East Kenton County, 56, almost 57%. Not a ton of votes in here yet, but they're working their way up. Go back to 2016. These were counties where President Trump won 64% of the votes. Let's come over here to Boone County, 72% of the votes. Here's another one, Campbell County, 63% of the vote. So as the numbers come in, we'll be able to get a better sense as to whether or not the president is, come back to 2020, whether or not the president is meeting his margin from 4 years ago. If he is, he's in for a good night. If he exceeds that, a really good night. If he's below that, there will be concern in the Trump team tonight as to whether or not they can pull this off in 2020. So watching it, Pennsylvania's coming up in about 20 minutes.
You know, Bill, you know that in Panhandle, the polls close in about 24 minutes, but some polls have closed in other parts of Florida. Obviously, down in Florida, you have key places like Sumter County and the Villages that both campaigns have focused on. Do you populate, is there vote total coming in from those places?
There is a vote total. There's not a percentage breakdown. In other words, you can look at this spread. 67% in Sumter County, right? Villages, seniors, how are they breaking right now? Do they have concerns about COVID? Are seniors voting differently in Florida than they are perhaps in Pennsylvania? Residents at 67% of the vote, about 58,000 raw votes. From 2016, he was at 70% with 52,700 raw votes. So that's about, quick math again, forgive me, but it's about 70,000 plus here from 2016. This year we've got about 70,000 votes in here too. So what we cannot see through the projection we're getting from the Associated Press is the percentage in this county of the vote. You can find that on the Secretary of State's website, etc. But this only lets us know that we're pretty close to 100%, but not entirely there. If this is as far as Donald Trump gets in Sumter County, and that's where he was 4 years ago, he's got some work to do in that part of Florida. But again, it could be offset in different aspects. I can tell you on the phone with the Trump campaign throughout the day, they're confident about Florida. They say they're in the game in Georgia, North Carolina as well, Ohio also. What they will hedge a little bit on is Pennsylvania. They believe it's too close to call. And then as we work back into the upper Midwest here, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, some of the campaign from the Trump side argue they're in it, Minnesota. We'll find out through the course of the night here. But Wisconsin and Michigan, they were hedging their bets a little bit. They believe those states, at least the folks I talked to, were too close to call.
All right.
Bill, let's go down to Georgia.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to do?
I want to go to North Carolina.
Oh, go
Let's go
ahead.
to Georgia, and then we'll go to North
I
Carolina.
thought I was reading your mind. Georgia, around Atlanta, those areas, the suburbs, Fulton County, DeKalb County.
At the moment, no information in here yet from DeKalb County, which is east of Atlanta. No information yet in from Gwinnett County either. This is Fulton County. This is what it's given us right now. Donald Trump's got 161 votes. Joe Biden has 146. I guarantee you there are more people on the sidewalk tonight in downtown Atlanta than the votes coming in there. So it's early in the night for Fulton. But I really think this is something to watch. Cobb County, How does it break? There's a lot of data that's coming in there so far. I'll just pop around here and just give you guys a better sense. Fayette County, minimal. Over here in Henry County, just a few numbers here around Atlanta. So we've got a long way to go in the state of Georgia as it stands right now. It's 7:38, 7:40 in the evening. Martha, you mentioned North Carolina.
Yeah, I just want to mention before you go to North Carolina from Georgia, apparently at the State Farm Arena, they were delayed 4 hours because of a water pipe burst in that room. And they don't expect, as you say, Bill, that Fulton County will come in for quite some time. That's home to a tenth of the voters in Georgia in that Atlanta region.
And it's going to give you a measure of suburban votes in the northern part of the county. It's going to give you a measure of African Americans who live in the city of Atlanta itself. So we'll watch this. North Carolina apparently had about a half dozen precincts that got started late earlier today. So they have extended the vote there for about a half hour, 45 minutes. We thought we'd be getting numbers at 7:30 East Coast time. That's not the case. Look to them to come in around 8 o'clock, 8:15, and we'll see what this balance is for the state of North Carolina.
One of the things that we're all looking at is whether or not President Trump will be driving up these numbers in these rural areas, because that was one of the early indications in the evening in 2016 that the balance had shifted and that they were finding voters that they, that nobody had really campaigned to all that much, frankly. And they have said all along, Bill, that is the key to their success again tonight. Is there any indication, anything that you're seeing, that that's happening? I know you just showed us one county where he was falling short of that, Florida.
This is North Carolina from 2016. It's a great point, Mike. That's sort of the area that we're focused on. Donald Trump flipped 6 counties in North Carolina from 2012 to 2016. This is one of them. This is Robeson County. He was nearby there in Fayetteville just a short time ago, 52.5% of the vote from 2016. For comparison's sake, to let you know how well he did here in 2016, look where you were in 2012. Barack Obama had 59% of the vote in that county alone. So this year, 2020, sorry, I'll go to 2016, does he match it? Even at 20,000 votes, if these races in these states are this tight, that makes a big difference in the outcome for the 15 electoral votes in states like North Carolina. Another one here. This is white. It is rural. It is a part of the country that Donald Trump has been holding these campaign rallies at for some time. It's Rutherford County. It's right next to Asheville, North Carolina, the western part of the state. 74% of the vote. Again, it's only 21,000. That can make a big difference in a race that's very tight. 74%. Does he meet the margin of that percentage this year? Does he exceed it or does he get below it? So we'll see shortly here when this map starts to fill in North Carolina.
Hey, Bill, one more. Let's go to Ohio. First of all, you're right. The Trump campaign feels confident not only about Florida, but Ohio. And looking at our voter analysis survey, they have reason to be about some of the numbers that we're getting. You're from Ohio. You know it well. But you look at those counties along the border to tell a story.
I tell you, 4 years ago, guys, when we were here, that was the indication to me that this was going to be a very close race between Donald Trump. I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Up here in northeastern Ohio, these were deep blue 8 years ago. You think about Ashtabula and Trumbull and Mahoning. That runs right along the Pennsylvania border. Who are these voters? Blue-collar, steel workers. They've been voting Democratic for generations. And in 2016, look what they did with Whips. I think these are significant places here when you get a 60-40 split. And Ashtabula down to Trumbull, 53%. Mahoning County, where you find Youngstown, the president did not win that county, but he came as close as you have seen for any Republican in decades. And I knew at that moment that Donald Trump was in this campaign when a lot of people thought he was out 4 years ago. So how do we look at that now across the border here in Pennsylvania? All these counties here, he was just here in Butler County over the weekend. He had some 50,000 people turn out, 61,000 raw votes there from 2016. Pop around here and you look at his margin, 76.8, 68.5, 80% in some of these counties. He needs these numbers offset the following. This is Philadelphia down here. This is Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. Philadelphia clocked in 560,000 votes for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So you got to offset it in the countryside if we're going to overcome that in the city of Philadelphia.
All right, you do that better than anyone. So we're going to come back live, and we'll be checking in throughout the night. Thank you, Bill. We have a race to call, and that is the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. We can now project that he will win that Senate race against Amy McGrath, the Democrat. She spent $73.4 million on this race. We're looking at it not being that close. And Mitch McConnell will go on to another term. We just don't know whether he will be Senate Majority Leader or Senate Minority Leader by the end of the process.
Yeah, during this process, though, Amy McGrath did manage to put some pressure on Mitch McConnell that he has not felt in prior races. But we see tonight that he has a very decisive win in Kentucky. And, you know, he has been at the helm of one of President Trump's most fervent errands, which has been loading up federal judges and the federal bench with conservative judges and just put Amy Coney Barrett on the bench as well. So, I mean, obviously this allows Mitch McConnell to, in one way or another, depending on what happens with the presidency tonight, to continue in his role as a senator, but whether or not he will be in that majority leader spot is a big, big question tonight.
You know, we should introduce Dana Perino and Juan Williams.
Do that.
With Chris Wallace. You know, Dana, this is a big win for Mitch McConnell. A lot of people thought this was the one. This is the one that's going to go down. And Senator McConnell is going to lose to Amy McGrath, but it's not going to.
You have to say, I think that she raised $100 million. You don't see Republicans out there clamoring for campaign finance reform because they raised this much money, but he took it seriously, especially early on. But I think that you have to look at the Democrats and say, for Chuck Schumer, the candidate recruitment in that race was really not very good. Plus, think about what Mitch McConnell was able to close on. The confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice and Amy Coney Barrett, and she's a very popular person across America. The other thing is that you called West Virginia for Shelley Moore Capito. She was the first woman to represent West Virginia in the Senate, and she will be returning there for another 6 years. I think when it comes to candidate recruitment, when you look at Mitch McConnell, what he was able to do versus what Chuck Schumer was able to do, even though there are very close races to watch tonight in the Senate, that Mitch McConnell probably wins when it comes to that as well. Juan, let's bring you in to the conversation here. It makes me think about South Carolina, about Lindsey Graham's race against Jamie Harrison. Lindsey Graham also probably got a bit of a lift from the judiciary hearing, which he ran as the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Your thoughts as we look ahead to that race, which has been very tight for Lindsey Graham?
Well, again, you know, to me, I don't see that race, that, you know, the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett necessarily driving it. I think it is an accomplishment for Mitch McConnell, really. But I think that when you look at that, the question is, are people now turning out to say thank you, or are people moving on and taking that for granted? I think in large part, what we're seeing tonight is people are responding to, in the case of Mitch McConnell, someone who has tremendous power in Washington, who can bring home the goodies for Kentucky. And in the state of South Carolina, I think if you look at the advertising that Lindsey Graham's been running, he's made it clear that he is part of the tradition, part of the legacy in terms of leadership, strong leadership in that state, and making Jamie Harrison out to be the newcomer. And usually in these races, Martha, people want to be the outsider, they want to be the change agent, not in the case of Lindsey Graham versus Jamie Harrison. But I just want to go back for a second to that Kentucky race, because I think so much of that was driven in the internals on the Democratic side by what happened with the police killing of Breonna Taylor. And what you get then all of a sudden was a tremendous divide among Democrats in terms of who the nominee would be. And a black candidate coming up strong against Amy McGrath, she just barely held on at the very end of that Democratic primary process. But I don't think that she was positioned in terms of the fact that, you know, Mitch McConnell brings home the bacon in a big way for the state of Kentucky, and it's hard to go up against that legacy.
Yeah, Britt, I mean, he's a survivor.
Yeah, he is, and I would say this about him. I don't go back to Lyndon Johnson. I wasn't on the beat marching quite back that far. But I go back a ways, as does my colleague Chris here. And I think Mitch McConnell is the most effective floor leader in either party that I've ever seen. In his quiet and understated way, he has been extraordinarily effective. He has this sort of ability to know what the rules are at the right moment. And
he's negotiated the Trump administration pretty well.
He did, and I know for a fact that he had privately judicial nomination. Job one for him.
And look how he handled these judicial nominations, the justice nominations. When it came to Merrick Garland in 2016, as soon as Barack Obama named Merrick Garland, he said he is not going to get a vote. He's not going to get a hearing. It's just not going to happen. Conversely, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, he immediately said he's going to get a vote. He wasn't sure whether it was going to happen before the election or not, but he was going to go full speed ahead to name this. And by doing that, he kind of forces everybody in his party. He plants the flag, and they have to rally around it. He's really, I agree, an enormously effective senator.
And he will be in the Senate for 6 more years. Again, we don't know which leader position at this point.
So polls closing minutes from now in a big haul of states, including Florida and Pennsylvania, 2 states that could very well decide the presidential race. Election night 2020 continues after this.
Did you know you can go to Liberty?
Businesses keep our world running, and Cintas keeps them running by helping them make sure workers are well equipped and companies are well prepared. Supplies are delivered and stocked. Facilities are clean and ready. Every day, over 1 million businesses depend on Cintas. Get Cintas. Get ready for the workday.
Already!
Hey, Tony, what you doing?
I am just reviewing some of the best plays.
Movie, huh?
Total MVP here. Check it out. They got a huge offensive line.
Yeah, but what if there's an audible?
Tubi is such a deep bench of free movies and television shows. It's always a perfect play.
We're kind of a big deal here. That sounds like a total game changer.
Tubi. Download now on all your favorite devices.
So excellent service. Getting right to the point, hiring a good agent. I wish we would have done that sooner, and we would have saved 6 months of time, mortgage payments that would probably never happen. We would have just gone with it first.
They were so stress-free. The whole process was amazing, and I would definitely recommend them.
Certainly recommend ideally to all of our family, all of our friends. It's just the greatest experience.
We are not a discount brokers. These are top local agents that'll get you the best results.
These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com for discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime, right from your computer. All of the amazing services of the post office, only cheaper. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/now and never go to the post office again.
Are you sick and tired of looking and feeling heavy? Probiotics promotes healthy digestion and helps lose weight. Patented probiotics ease constipation, gas, and bloating, while powerful EGCG burns fat and calories. Unleash your potential with Probiotics, the #1 probiotic fat burner at Walmart.
Guys, are you tired of frequent nighttime bathroom trips? Well, Force Factor Prostate helps reduce urges to urinate, plus fully empty your bladder and promote a normal prostate size. Don't settle. Choose Force Factor Prostate from the #1 fastest growing men's health brand at Walmart.
Welcome back, everybody. We are minutes away from getting results from over a dozen states, including the crucial state of Florida, always extremely important in any presidential race, and the equally watched state of Pennsylvania is also just moments away from closing their polls tonight. Mail-in voting has been a particularly contentious issue in Pennsylvania. President Trump has been openly critical of the U.S. Supreme Court and its ruling in that matter. Let's go to Philadelphia now and hear from Aisha Hassan. All right, we're waiting for Aisha. We're going to get her back in just a moment, but obviously the issues that have been plaguing Pennsylvania are these decisions, not only by the Supreme Court, but by their state Supreme Court as well, which allow them to extend the date to which they can continue to accept votes, and they don't necessarily have to be postmarked by November 3rd. Even if that postmark is a little bit fuzzy, they're going to assume that it was sent before November 3rd. Also, signatures a big issue in Pennsylvania.
This is a big issue.
Very
There's
big
not
story.
a federal standard. Each state does it differently. So whether they match the signatures on the absentee ballots, whether the postmark has to be legible on November 3rd, take a live look in Philadelphia, and they're going through these ballots. It's kind of mesmerizing to look at this, but this is what they're doing. They're going through all of this, and this is going to be a count in Philadelphia that we're told is going to take days.
Yeah, you got to open up the envelope. You got to take out the envelope on the inside. Everything has to be signed. Everything has to be postmarked. This is a process that we've just never seen at this kind of magnitude, 100 million votes.
Let's get back to our panel. Carl Rove down in Brazil, Katie Pavlich. Carl, okay, we're starting to see some more vote totals coming in. We're starting to get more population of our voter analysis survey. What is it?
Well, we're starting to hear some interesting things. One county, a large county, Fulton County, expected to have 140 to 170,000 voters. This is downtown Atlanta, if you will, and instead they had about 15,000 people vote as of 5 p.m. today. Obviously, a lot of people took the opportunity to vote early, but even the local election officials found the number of voters who showed up today in an area where Biden has to run strong to win that state. They found a big turnout. If this is repeated in states like Ohio and like Michigan and like Pennsylvania and all across the country in these battleground states, this is not a good trend. Maybe it's limited to Georgia, but what you see in one part of the country tends to be duplicated elsewhere.
One of those places had the water main. By those two states?
Absolutely. When you said Florida, I almost had PTSD again. But luckily I don't. Look. Bill just showed us Duval County, which strangely enough, Joe Biden is keeping it very competitive. That's very important. That's Jacksonville. Sumter County, that's not a blowout. I'm also looking at Pinellas County. I mean, Barack Obama and Joe Biden carried it in 2008. Hillary Clinton lost it in 2016. So there are a lot of votes to come in Florida. I'm also watching Ohio, along with, of course, North Carolina, where there's still a few counties that are waiting to close their polls. So the night is still early. I'm still optimistic. There are multiple paths, and until I see one road closed, I'm still very optimistic with Joe Biden.
So just an update on Fulton County. Apparently the Georgia Secretary of State is saying that they did have a pipe break and that it slowed things down, but that they do expect that they're going to have results from Fulton County tonight. As I said, it's a tenth of the vote in Georgia. So that will be a very important element to the count. Let's go to Katie Pavlich. Katie, looking at Florida, it looks very tight at this point. They've got 48% of the precincts reporting there. But obviously the Panhandle is very significant to the Trump team. What are you hearing?
Well, first in Fulton County, they are going to keep those polls open until 9 o'clock to give people the chance to cast their votes if they're still in line or had an issue with the water main break earlier in the day. But down to Florida, if Joe Biden doesn't turn the numbers around in Miami-Dade County, he's in for a rough night, and President Trump is on his way to a victory in that state which President Trump needs to win tonight. He can't lose Florida in order to win. But you had a number of Biden campaign surrogates over the last week sounding the alarm about the lack of turnout among Black and Latino voters in Miami-Dade. You had James Carville begging for enthusiasm for Joe Biden in that county. And so we'll see if Joe Biden can make up the numbers in that county for the rest of the night as we continue to get those votes in. But overall, the Panhandle, of course, is Trump country. And we'll wait to see if those voters turned out as the Trump campaign is depending on and believes that they will.
For you, Florida?
Just with regard to the elderly vote in Florida, which is critical in that state, there was a Quinnipiac poll about a month ago that had Biden up like 15 points in the elderly. It was widely thought that the elderly vote in that state was toward Biden. So far, 65 voters 65 and older, Trump leading by the narrowest margin, 50 to 49. Now, obviously, he'd like to be winning by more than that, but that's a lot different picture than getting not very many weeks ago with a senior vote in Florida. So that might be encouraging for Trump.
Think about how many stops that both campaigns made in Florida, in North Carolina, in Georgia. Those three southern states are going to be really crucial. We're getting ready for the next poll close, and we may have some more calls for seconds.
The polls are closing in 18 states. 175 electoral votes are up for grabs. What happens in December could define America.
We are going to win my home state of Florida. She's in Florida, and it's all over.
It's 8 o'clock here in New York City. Polls have just closed in another 16 states. Let's begin with the big prize, Florida, the biggest electoral prize of this hour, and a must-win state for President Trump if he is to secure a second term. The Fox News decision desk is currently pouring over a lot of voting data from the Sunshine State, a lot of actual votes, plus what we know from voter analysis, but it's not ready to project a winner there.
Very tight, as expected in Florida, as we wait for the rest of that to come in. And while Joe Biden could win the presidency without Florida, he would have a much tougher time without Pennsylvania, where both candidates have focused so ferociously over the course of the last several days. It could be a while before we know who wins the Keystone State. It could be days or weeks, perhaps, before we know what happens in Pennsylvania. It didn't begin to process their mail-in vote until today. They've also got some counties that they won't even begin counting until Wednesday. They're going to go through the day of vote in Pennsylvania, and then in those 7 counties, they'll start opening their votes and beginning the mail-in vote.
I'm more optimistic. It is not, however, too early to call the winners in a dozen other contests, including the District of Columbia. In fact, let's start with our nation's capital, liberal stronghold. Biden will easily defeat President Trump, according to our Fox News voter analysis. Not surprisingly, Biden's home state of Delaware will also vote decisively for the former vice president. Biden will also post a victory in Massachusetts, according to our Fox News decision desk.
And the reliably blue state of Rhode Island will also be added to the Biden column tonight. Ditto for Connecticut, where the former vice president will post a victory as well. Biden will also prevail in Illinois, where the president has long railed against the violence in Chicago. He will also pick up the perennially blue state of Maryland, according to the decision desk. And finally, Joe Biden will win the state of New Jersey. A big blue run for him in those states, none of which are surprising tonight.
President Trump also racks up some electoral votes at this hour. The Fox News decision desk can now project that Trump will easily win the state of Alabama. We're also watching a Senate race there. The president will also prevail in Mississippi, according to the Fox News voter analysis. You will not be shocked to learn that the Republican president will breeze past his Democratic challenger in the state of Tennessee.
Fox can also project that President Trump will win Missouri, which has now voted Republican in 6 consecutive presidential contests. The president will also beat Joe Biden in Oklahoma, according to our decision desk.
One of the few states where we cannot project a winner at this hour is New Hampshire, where we need to analyze more voting data before making a call in the granite state. Finally, let's turn to Maine, one of the 2 states that does use the winner-take-all method for allocating electoral votes. They do not, actually, they split out one. Our decision desk can now project that Joe Biden will win 3 of Maine's 4 electoral votes. But again, there's another one that's split out. We don't have enough data yet to determine the winner of Maine's 2nd congressional district, which represents the state's 4th electoral vote. That importance of that one vote really could loom large if the national electoral contest comes down to the wire. The other one that splits it out, Nebraska.
So Maine is also a state that has a very closely watched Senate race at this hour. Republican Senator Susan Collins is trying to fend off a challenge from Democrat Sarah Gideon in a race that could help determine overall control of the Senate. It is too early to make a projection on that race at the moment. The other big Senate race of the hour is in Alabama, where incumbent Democrat Doug Jones faces a strong challenge from Republican Tommy Tuberville. Too early to call that contest, which if Tuberville prevails, could be the first Senate flip of the night, and that would leave them with 3 pickups in the future if they were to do that.
And there you see the balance of power. Fox News can project that Republicans will keep their Senate seats in Tennessee and Oklahoma, while Democrats will keep their Senate seats in Illinois, Maryland, New Jersey, and Delaware. All of the other Senate races in states where the polls have now closed are still too early or close to call. The same for gubernatorial races. Will bring you any surprises in that as we get there.
Let's take a look at the electoral map right now. You've got 56 for President Trump, 91 for Joe Biden. It's almost as if, you're playing the what-if game, and we're easily starting to fill in some of the ones that you punch in that are givens, essentially, across the map. And the battleground states, obviously, are going to be blank for some time this evening. If we could just pull up North Carolina and Ohio again, just to demonstrate what we were talking about earlier tonight, about how some of these states are going to look very red or very blue early on in the evening, but we're still waiting for more data, obviously, to come in these places, because the mail-in vote leans heavily towards Biden, and the walk-in vote today You can see 65 to 31 in North Carolina, and we'll get Ohio up there as well. But this is where we want to be cautious.
Right. And you see less than 1% of the precincts in, you see the numbers on the screen. And in the states that we can make a projection, that's based on our voter analysis and where our decision desk knows that state's going to go. Bill Hemmer is back with a look at where things stand tonight. So far, some key states. We talked about Florida. We're talking about Pennsylvania all night long.
Bill, guys, good evening again. Let's talk about our viewers now. Again, this is real-time data. You're seeing it at home the same time we're seeing it here. In Florida, you got 82% of the vote tallied now, okay? Talk about the panhandle. It closed at 3 o'clock a moment ago, as we mentioned. For these counties that are gray will start to fill in, and indeed they are red. I would expect this based on 2016. A lot of Trump votes to be right here in the panhandle. As it is right now, 83% of the votes in. President with a half-point lead now in the state of Florida. You've got upwards of 9 million votes cast. Just for a comparison vote, your advance vote was around 9 million too, and Florida's been counting all day, so this runs right along with what we sort of anticipated in terms of raw numbers in that state. Again, about 0.7 lead there. The Trump team felt very good about this state about midway through the day today, and they continue to go that way now. We'll see whether or not that holds. You mentioned Georgia, you guys are going to pop up these East Coast here. We're only about 11% of the vote in Georgia. President with a slight lead there, but often it takes time to figure out where the vote's coming in from. Remember, this is Atlanta, Fulton County. So some more votes are starting to come in from Atlanta. Joe Biden, 58,000 raw votes, Trump with 13,000. That's going to change throughout the night here. Well, we got the time here. You guys mentioned North Carolina. Been a little stubborn, only because they had a bit of a delay. It's supposed to be 7:30. Got late about a little bit past 8 o'clock. So as it starts to fill in here, not a ton of data here. We can start poking around on the suburbans of Canada. Yeah, we just talked about this a moment ago. President, big numbers there from 4 years ago, and right now too early really to get a measure. Well, the president's going to win this county. We know that. We can say that by what margin is something that is still outstanding. You guys mentioned Pennsylvania. Here we go. It is now closed, and this is the amount of data that we have from the Keystone State. Hey, it's early. I told you it was early, right? So, indeed, it's early. While I've got you here, let's go over to Ohio. And if you guys got questions, go ahead and jump in here. But this is now 35% of the vote is in now in Ohio. And so we got a ways to go right here with Joe Biden. Remember the early night 2 hours ago, we said this thing's going to take different turns and twists. It could be diabolical in a sense because the vote could come in heavy blue and it'll shift to red or vice versa. So we'll be patient with this.
All right, don't look at the map. What's the 5th county down on the left? No, I'm just kidding. But show us where you're looking. Like where are you focusing on?
A couple of things here. This Cincinnati down here, Hamilton County, Franklin County, Columbus, Cuyahoga, Cleveland. So those are your 3 seats. One thing we talked a couple of minutes ago about the northeastern corridor here. This is Trumbull County. Okay, I'm looking at raw votes here. Don't have the entire vote for the percentages for the total vote for the county. Joe Biden's got 33,000 votes. Donald Trump has 24,000. 55,000 votes. 2016, in that county, they had 90,000 votes cast. Donald Trump fought Hillary Clinton by 6 points. So you've got a ways to go right here. But based on this, Joe Biden seems to be in a pretty decent poll position at the moment. Let's see what other precincts clock in here in the moment. So I'm watching that. I'm watching Cuyahoga. Pop down here to Hamilton County. This is Cincinnati. Just a few votes in right now. It's a big congressional race there. Steve Chabot's up for re-election. It's gotten a lot of attention down here in the 1st district. Here's what I would say. This is Warren County. This is suburban Cincinnati. This is where people who grow up in Cincinnati move when they become adults and they want to have a larger piece of land and a larger home and raise their family. There's been a lot of suburban flight into Warren County for the last 20 years or so. So it gives us a measure right now about how these people are thinking. Donald Trump, 50,000 raw votes. Joe Biden, 36. How does that compare to 2016? Donald Trump got only 70% of the vote in Warren County. Right now, he seems to be doing rather well in Warren County. We'll see him again as the votes start to trickle in. So, much up here, Delaware County is north of Columbus. It's early. Pop down here to Franklin County. This is one of these counties that a lot of people have their eye on for people who are leaving the Republican Party. So keep an eye on that. Just a comparison, say, 2016. All right, 63. It was 2-1 4 years ago, and at the moment, at this stage in the night, Joe Biden is faring better, I should say. Raw votes, just quick math in my head here, guys, will say 350,000 total votes in Franklin County so far. 4 years ago, you're in excess of 600,000. So we've got some votes that still come in this part of Ohio.
So let's take another look at Florida, and I just want to take a look at some of the voter analysis questions on coronavirus for Florida voters. And the question is, say if you have had this experience during the coronavirus pandemic, you or someone in your household has lost a job or lost income. 56% of the people who said yes to that question are Biden voters. 41% of them are Trump voters. Have you lost a close friend or family member to the virus? Among those who said yes, 65% are Biden voters and 32% are Trump voters. These are Florida numbers. And obviously, Florida fared well in the beginning and then got pretty hard hit by the virus. Your thoughts on that and where we might see counties that would be responding?
I think it's a very interesting point to make, Martha. We can throw this map around for COVID as it affects the world and also how it affects the U.S. So I'll show you that throughout the night. You're right about Florida. It peaked in July, but then they started to get a handle on it. So how are these folks feeling down here in Florida? I think the example we use in a moment with the seniors in Suffolk County and how they feel. So, all right, so far, the margin for Joe Biden is slightly better than what Hillary Clinton did 4 years ago. Like slightly better, just about 2 points better. Is that enough to flip the state? It doesn't appear to be right now. At 85% of the vote tally here, the president's increasing his lead since the time we came on the air 4 minutes ago. So if that trend continues, you can in all likelihood make a call here in Florida shortly, and the panhandle's going to fill in. And as I mentioned a moment ago, this is deep red country here. And I would expect it to be the same case just coming up here in a few minutes.
So, Bill, we are competing with you on the desk. We have now our own board at which, we're talking about coronavirus. You look at this heat and you look at where this is a major factor in this country, and it goes from yellow to deep red. I mean, the country is essentially red or light red across the board. Florida is in the deep red category as far as cases. So coronavirus is hanging over this entire election. The question is whether it's the lockdown and the economy, as President Trump closed with, or Joe Biden saying that the president's not handling it effectively.
Yeah, it's a good question. This is October 5th in Florida on the heat map, right? This is what they were doing. Go back a month prior to that. September 7th, it was rather red. You look down here at the change per weekly. Let me just throw you back a couple months here and see where we were back in, let's say, but this is June 15th, right? This is Florida. Pretty good condition at the moment there. Change in a week, though, was up 90% in cases. All right, so now I'm going to fast forward through the months, okay? Mid-July, you're up 37% in change per week. That is a massive amount of a COVID explosion, you can call it. August 10th, though, you're back down to 90%. Come into September, you're down to 4%. You see the trend here, right? We talked about them peaking, and then as of today, even though the map shows red, you're at 4% of an increase in cases from month to month. What that shows is that Florida had that spike and they got it back under control. What we can't say, I don't think for the moment here, is how all that factors into this vote, and whether or not it's a determinant factor as to whether who wins this state. But at 86%, we can keep talking here, guys, and we're going to see these numbers change. And since we've come on the air here, Donald Trump continues the increases.
That's a lot of vote, 86% of the precincts.
I would agree, yes. I think you're exactly right about that, Brett. If you follow this vote throughout the day, Democrats had a clear lead in that early vote that came in before today. They were well in the lead. Donald Trump won the state by 100,000 votes in 2016. There are some observers throughout Florida today that are looking deep into these numbers, and they think he can ultimately win the state perhaps by 3 points. If that's the case, you're up 300,000 votes in Florida, then we would move to a different contest, perhaps up here in Georgia, to see whether or not the Southeast stays red.
That's the first part of the Trump path, is the Florida vote. Bill, we'll head back to this one.
Thanks, Bill. So as results continue to come in tonight, let's bring in Tucker Carlson, host of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Tucker, great to have you with us. It's 8:15 on the East Coast. What are your thoughts as you look at what we've heard so far?
Kind of not what we were told to expect. I'm especially interested in Florida. It does look like the president's got a very good shot at winning. But I'm interested in this because elections tell you what the parties actually look like. Now, what you imagine they look like when you find out who voted for them. So the coalitions become really clear. And in Florida, the population center, of course, Miami-Dade County, the biggest county in the state, Hillary Clinton 4 years ago got 334,000 votes there. An hour ago, with 84% reporting, Donald Trump had already outstripped that by more than 100,000 votes. Now, Miami-Dade is 70% Hispanic. That's not what you would have expected if you've been watching for the past 6 months this attempt to racialize everything, to make Trump the greatest racist in the world's history. You would expect, whether you buy that or not, you would expect that would depress the votes for Trump in Miami-Dade County. But the opposite happened. He's doing better there with non-white voters than he did 4 years ago. Now, I'm not exactly sure why that is. I suspect, the BLM message is a mixed blessing. It doesn't appeal to all voters in the same way, and it turns some off. And some of those are Hispanic voters. But we'll figure it out in the coming weeks. But the obvious lesson is this is not what people predicted. This morning, the New York Times, Nate Silver had the president's chances of winning Florida at 31%. So you have to kind of wonder, how did that, these are smart people, they have access to all the data, they thought about this, even it's their job to think about it. How could they be that wrong on the day of the election? And I'm not quite sure I know the answer, but at some point, we, the media, need to pause and ask ourselves serious questions about how we're thinking through what's going to happen and how we present it, because our predictions affect outcomes to some extent, and they also, of course, determine our credibility. People judge us based on our predictions. And so something really went wrong in the way we predicted a number of these races. And we just restate something really quick. Florida is the future of the country, not simply because it's multi-ethnic, which obviously it is, but because that's where people are moving. Yeah. Florida and Texas are two of the states that have the biggest inflow from other states, Americans moving from state to state, they're moving to Florida in huge numbers. And so it does tell you something about where we're going. And I think if you're a Republican or a Trump voter, it tells you something more hopeful than you expected.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the key is that Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and we're starting to get more and more of that vote in. Florida, the Trump people feel confident about in this hour. But Georgia, North Carolina, question marks. It's part of his path to 70. He can clearly get there. It's not as big a window as the Trump people. I think.
Yeah, again, it's not what we expected. Certainly, if you live in the world that I live in, the media world, the political world, not many people believe the president had any chance whatsoever. None. This was going to be a blue wave. This was going to be an early night. Again, we don't know. It's 8:18. We don't know the outcome. And I think it's always been a pretty tough race for the incumbent president. But it's not what people thought it was last night. And again, you have to ask yourself, why is that? Why is the demonstrated reality so different from what purportedly smart people said it was going to be? And again, I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to have mountains of data. This is the second election in a row that people paid to get it right apparently got it wrong. And I just think it's important to learn from your mistakes, and I hope that we do. I really do. I take them seriously. Well, how do we screw it up? We, in effect, lied to people. How did that happen?
With the Hispanic vote, Tucker, when I look across the charts on a number of states, it looks like the president, and this is obviously very early looking at this data, it looks like he's doing better with Hispanics than with African-American voters, at least in the states that we have seen coming in so far, and that could change throughout the evening. But what everybody, the sort of conventional wisdom of Florida is, well, that's just the Cuban vote, and Cubans are Republicans. That's what we've been hearing over and over again. Do you think that holds up to be true, or do you see this Hispanic trend being broader than that across the country?
Well, I would just say two things. Again, Donald Trump did better in Florida and Miami-Dade, 70% in County this year than he did before. Florida's actually less Cuban Hispanic population. Florida is, just to be precise about it, since you asked, is less Cuban than it was 4 years ago. And it is a very diverse community. Not everyone we call Hispanic is, had from the same culture, has the same views, obviously. We should always be clear about that and not pretend that all people of any group are the same, because they're definitely not. I just think it's interesting that the emphasis from the leaders of the Democratic Party for months has been on race and racism, and the conversation we've been having as a country has been about racism. You would expect, and their intent, the whole point of this, was to affect political outcomes. It's really remarkable, no matter what the final result is, that this president, specifically this one, denounced every day as a racist, is doing better with non-white voters. And again, I do think that the BLM message is clearly very appealing to a lot of white suburban voters. It's clearly very unappealing to a lot of non-white voters. Who expected that?
Yeah, we've got a call real quick. Stand by, Tucker. President Trump will win the state of Indiana, home state, to Vice President Mike Pence. We can make that call. Fox News decision desk projecting that the president will win Indiana. Tucker, you mentioned BLM earlier. Briefly talked about all the boarding up of Manhattan, Georgetown, kind of getting ready. We're in a different place.
We are in a different place, and I guess what I'm struck by is how readily and passively we've accepted it. I mean, this is a great and free country filled with courageous and decent people. Why for a second would we put up with the assumption that we need to hunker down and protect ourselves from violence on an election day? It's very distressing, and it's not a partisan point at all. I'm just saying that as someone who's lived in this country for 51 years, we shouldn't have to fear violence. We should be brave in the face of threats. And it is something very kind of bewildering and sad to see that. And you just hope that your children and your grandchildren won't grow up in a country where it's taken for granted that you need to hide inside or arm yourself or close the liquor stores or put plywood over your windows on election day. That is the rule in the third world. I've covered elections in disordered, violent countries, and everyone does what they're doing in Georgetown, where I partly grew up, by the way. I know the neighborhood very well. Everyone does that in a lot of other countries. You don't want that here. And I don't know exactly what the answer is. And again, I'm not making a partisan point. There are certainly partisan points to be made, but I'll skip it on election night. I want to make it a point as an American, which is that's not acceptable. You don't want to live in that country, and whatever it takes to fix that, we should do. I think it probably begins with the expectations of our leaders. Violence is never an acceptable or legitimate form of political expression, ever. And I don't care what they say on Twitter. I don't care what they suggest from the podium. That is totally wrong, and we should never put up with it, for real.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was too slow an evolution to come to that conclusion over the course of the summer, and we saw things sort of, allowed in places like Portland and Seattle, and that sort of set the tone for what we then saw in all of these other cities. And then Democrats started to play catch-up, Tucker, at the DNC when they saw some numbers coming back that showed, no, actually, Americans do not want to get to the point where they go, oh yeah, I guess, we're going to board up the windows again for whatever's coming down the pike. It's not normal, as you aptly point out.
No, and the assumption behind it is just so poisonous that people with a certain color or poor people like violence or will accept violence. No, all people, no matter what they look like, no matter what they make, despise disorder, chaos, violence. It's a threat to the things they care about most, their families. It's always wrong. The law and order, not repression, but law and order, literally order. These are laws we obey them. This is order. We stay within these lines because we've learned over thousands of years we need to if we want to preserve society. That message resonates with everybody, everyone. Every human being wants that. And I don't know why we've gone through this kind of mass psychosis where both parties kind of lost faith in that. But it's always true in every country, in every moment. And I do think the results tonight, when you disaggregate them, you break out the numbers, you will see that a lot of voters who wouldn't have voted for Trump under any other circumstance may have voted for him tonight because they were really horrified by what they saw in our cities over the summer.
If President Trump loses tonight, why would
he would lose partly, I believe, well, probably many reasons. And, if he loses, I always tell my children this, when you lose, blame yourself first. Don't blame other people. Blame yourself first. I think that's morally important for all of us, not just for politicians. But I would say there are a lot of reasons, and they're obvious. I do think the coronavirus, the administration's response to it, also the political uses of it, it was used as a partisan cudgel, had an effect. I think the general feeling that things are out of control, and I actually don't think that's primarily the president's fault, but we can debate it. It doesn't matter. The incumbent will always suffer if people feel like, wow, what's going on? Why doesn't someone restore order? This is scary. I don't think the future makes me anxious. That feeling will always hurt the guy who's up for re-election, because every election, any strategist will tell you, is this very simple question. Do you want more of the same, or do you want something different? And in a time of anxiety, people instinctively say, I want to change the channel, I want something different. So it's probably a bunch of different things, but I think the theme is what I just said.
And if he wins, conversely,
and if he wins, of course it'll be, look, I don't like what's happening now, but these people are really scary. I mean, they're really scary. Really? Look, Republicans held both the legislative branch and the executive for 2 years in 2016. And they didn't make that many changes, but they made no structural changes. They didn't change the system at all. We're looking, if there's a Democratic sweep, at Democrats in the first year changing the Electoral College, changing the voting age, changing the number of states we have, changing the Supreme Court. I mean, changing the fundamentals, changing our system itself. And I think most people, even Democrats, are conservative, small c conservative, and they fear radical change. This is like a pretty good country, actually, despite its faults. Do you really want to tamper with the formula to overthrow the system that served us for 250 years? I think most people, if you calm down, maybe took Trump out of it, would say, no, I don't really want that. But that's what we can get. And I think it has scared people.
But Tucker, ironically, Joe Biden, I think, prevailed in the primary because he represented a return to normal. People saying, I would like to see establishment back, please. Thank you very much. I was okay with it.
That's right.
And in the reality, as you point out, that may or may not be what they end up getting, and they may or may not decide that they actually wanted to go back there. Who knows?
I think that's really smart. And a lot of this, certainly me, I missed this completely. Missed what Biden was really about. But you're absolutely right. I mean, in the short term, what happened was all the energy in the Democratic Party was behind Bernie Sanders. And the donor, he really was the popular choice, I would say, in both 2016 and 2020 among Democratic primary voters. And Democratic donors put the kibosh on that. I mean, people like Mike Bloomberg, who just, by the way, spent $100 million in Florida, $5 for every person in the state of Florida. People like that said, no Bernie Sanders. So Biden was the default. And I think, and I've known Biden for 30 years, and anyone who knows him will tell you he's a warm person. Nobody hates Joe Biden personally. I certainly don't. But I don't think the Biden of 1985 is the Biden that we're looking at today.
Tucker, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll closing in just a few minutes.
Keep it here.
Quick break. We'll be right back.
Is that a swing state? Why does it change? Has it been? 2020 marked the 100th anniversary of Mazda, a company founded on human ingenuity, a spirit that still drives us today. Now, Jenkins Mazda of Ocala invites you to celebrate this centennial milestone with impressive savings on every new Mazda, from our legendary sedans and crossovers to the all-new CX-30. Come celebrate 100 years of Mazda innovation and save now at Jenkins Mazda on State Road 200 in Ocala. Welcome to the family. Hey, Tony, what you doing?
I am just reviewing some of the best plays.
Scooby, huh?
Total MVP here. Check it out. They got a huge offensive line.
Yeah, but what if there's an audible?
Tubi is such a deep bench of 3 movies and television shows. There's always a perfect play.
We're kind of a big deal here. That sounds like a total game changer.
Tubi. Download that on all your favorite devices.
And then it's a snack for
So
dinner.
we're using a speakerphone in the store. Is that a good idea?
One of the ways I do that is to get them out of the home.
Looking for a grub brush. Gardens, can you ask for your help?
No. We all see it. We all see it.
Yes, Blair.
Okay.
Blue Progressive can protect you from becoming your parents, but we can't protect your home and auto when you bundle with us.
You don't know. So who climbs ladders to clean their gutters?
Dad, I keep telling you it's dangerous.
Climbing ladders is too dangerous. Leaf Filter puts an end to that. So how does it work? Leaf Filter's 3-piece system filters out leaves and debris, letting water flow through freely.
Do we need to replace our gutters?
Great question. Leaf Filter can be installed right on top of your existing gutters. We're sold. Call 833-LEAF FILTER or go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate.
This is Joe. He used to have bad breath. Now he uses a capital of TheraBreath Fresh Breath Oral Rinse to keep his breath smelling great all day long. TheraBreath. It's a better mouthwash. Walmart, Target, and other fine stores.
We are empowering retirement, and we are getting over 9.7 million people the guidance they need to help them pursue the future they imagine, making it easier for them to take action so they can focus on today while saving for tomorrow.
It is now 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast and 7:30 p.m. in Arkansas. The only state where polls close at this point in the evening. Fox News Decision Desk can now project that President Trump will easily defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of Arkansas. Also, polls have now belatedly closed in North Carolina, a must-win state for the president if he to secure another term. Democrats hope to turn this reliably red state blue, I should say, this year, although it's too early to determine whether those efforts will succeed.
We're also watching the North Carolina Senate race, which could help determine the balance of power, whether Republicans keep control of the Senate. Republican incumbent Tom Till is facing a strong challenge from Democrat Cal Cunningham. Too early to call that race. Back to Arkansas, we can now project that Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, some believe, will run for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024. Can do so if he chooses from the comfort of the Senate seat. That's because tonight Cotton will win re-election, easily beating a Libertarian challenger, Ricky Dale Harrington. Okay, let's look at the state of Florida. We're getting a separation here in Florida that seems to be going Donald Trump's way. Again, 29 electoral votes in for Florida, 88% of the precincts in. And if you look at the map, it keeps on populating. But the separation here could get to 3 points. If you look at some of these counties, for example, Palm Beach County, and obviously the president calls that home, 56-43, and just look back at 2016, what the spread was, 57-42. So it's kind of tracking there. But some of these other counties in the I-4 corridor, you see Donald Trump running up the lead. And I think we might be getting close on Florida because the Trump people rightly said that they felt comfortable with it. We're back on the panel. Chris, thoughts?
Well, Hillary Clinton lost by 1.2% in Florida back in 2016. If the current trend continues, Donald Trump will have a bigger victory. He'll have a bigger victory than that tonight over Joe Biden. And I know the Trump camp feels, well, if he does well in Florida, then maybe he'll have a bigger margin in Georgia and North Carolina and that march up the Atlantic coast. You know, it's fascinating. Let me also say, though, about Florida, it was almost a must-win state for Donald Trump. Almost any projection of Trump winning tonight, he had to win the 29 electoral votes from in Florida. Biden doesn't need that, and wasn't really counting on it, but hoped to win it. Certainly, he campaigned hard, and he said Barack Obama down there on Monday. So it'll be a disappointment to him, but it isn't a killer the way it would have been had the president lost Florida. You know, I'm looking at our Fox News opinion analysis, and you know, there's some numbers in here that would seem to bode very ill for Donald Trump. But when you ask people, are conditions in this country right direction or wrong direction? 62% wrong direction, 38% right direction. When you ask them, what's the single most important issue? If it's the economy, overwhelming, like 79-19 for Trump. If you think it's the coronavirus, 74-25 for Biden, and more people, a lot more people think the coronavirus is a bigger issue. So that would seem to indicate that Joe Biden was going to win in Florida, and it looks now, we're not calling it, but it looks like Biden might well lose. And I'm thinking, why? Part of it, I think, Tucker put his finger on that maybe people are frightened of Biden. And, you know, particularly with the talk about socialism, you have Cuban Americans, Venezuelan Americans. President in Florida hit those hard. He's going to turn it into another Castro Cuba. He's going to turn it into another Maduro Chavez Venezuela. I think that had an impact. I think just, you know, in the end, some people just feel more comfortable with Donald Trump as the leader over the next 4 years than with Joe Biden. And then I think something else we haven't talked about enough tonight, ground game. The Trump organization has had an enormous ground game, and just as the president has campaigned in front of a lot of people, they have had people, millions of people, knocking on doors and doing the old-fashioned kind of blocking and tackling of campaigning. The Biden campaign, just as Joe Biden didn't go out and meet with a lot of people and hold big rallies, the Biden campaign was doing a lot more of it virtually and on the phone. And it could conceivably be, at least in Florida, that the old-fashioned way of knocking on doors and neighbors, getting neighbors to go out and vote, may be the difference.
Yeah, I just a couple other things to point out here. I'd love to get Rich to weigh in on this. Looking at these voter analysis in Florida, would you say that Joe Biden is a strong leader? 3% say yes. Would you say that Donald Trump is a strong leader? And you've got 86% of those who say yes to that, going with President Trump. Same kind of breakdown that we're seeing in honest and trustworthy. President Trump does not fare well on that, didn't fare well on it in 2016, and yet it looks like people are leaning in his direction regardless of that. They think Joe Biden is very honest and trustworthy, but strong leader seems to be more important.
It does tell you something what people now expect from political
Really?
trustworthy wouldn't necessarily be the big go with, but you can imagine. By the way, folks, just to hark back to 4 years ago, and we talked about this on this night.
Here we go.
We've got a minor shift in the betting odds, which were well up over 65% Biden. Now it's 59.2 to 40. So at least some people who have money on the line have begun to think that Mr. Trump has a better chance than they did for many, many, many weeks. Betting averages didn't move at all. A couple other things, Martha. We've talked about the gender gap. Women outnumber men in this country 50.5% to 49.5%. That's been true for some years now. In this electorate, according to our voter analysis poll, or whatever we're calling it, it's 53-46 in this electorate. Women over men, and Joe Biden winning that cohort by 18 percentage points. Of course, that's a national number, so it doesn't necessarily tell you about much about the battleground states or anything like that, but it's something to keep an eye on tonight because women are.
And we are seeing
you guys are the majority, Martha, and even more so in this election.
And we are seeing, as expected, the gap in suburban women that was expected. That seems to be showing up in a lot of these states as well. Dana?
Well, actually, I was just looking at New Hampshire because we haven't called that yet. Right, we're waiting on it. Phil mentioned earlier. Well, one of the things there is you have the split, as Britt has pointed out, women voting at 51% to men at 48, a little bit closer than usual, but going for Biden 61 to 37. And New Hampshire was one of those states that from the beginning, President Trump only lost it by just a tiny amount in 2016, or 2,700 votes. So that was one that you would think that they could have picked up. And the way, if things get real tight here, and you need 4 electoral college votes to get you to 270, there is that. I also wanted to point out on Florida, I think the fact that the president went back over and over again, he never tired of going there. He would hold rallies there, but Chris mentioned the ground game, but also think of how many new registered voters that the Republicans had over the Democrats in Florida. It's a really big deal. I also think that the handling of Governor DeSantis of COVID seems to go well with how they think that the economy went. President Trump 2 years ago said, America will never be a socialist country. And then he went back over and again to the Cubans, to the Venezuelans. And it's not like we don't have real-time examples of what's happening in Venezuela, because we do. The other thing is, you have to remember the vote parades. And so you saw, Brett, there was enthusiasm. People were trying to figure out, okay, we can't gather in large groups, but how can we show our enthusiasm? And maybe there was something to it.
Yeah, Congressman Mike Waltz, a mutual friend of ours, Republican, going for re-election, and proves to that. He was down there for a number of rallies and said enthusiasm in Florida was real. As you look at the other numbers we're seeing, are Democrats worried about inner cities like Atlanta, like Columbus, Cleveland? Are you hearing concern about turnout in some of those big cities in the battleground cities?
Well, I think that you have to focus here, and focus in on Philadelphia, which has been primary. You saw in the last few days of campaigning. So far, they're not concerned. They're feeling pretty good about that. But I just wanted to go back to Florida for a second and talk about that Latino vote, right? Because, if you look at that right now, what you're seeing in Florida, according to our numbers, it's about 17% of the electorate in Florida was Latino. And you see among Latino men, it's 59-39 for Biden. Among Latino women, who are 9%, the majority of the Latino vote, 64-33. So Biden wins, but the margin of victory is markedly less than what we saw going back to 2016. In that time, we saw Clinton winning 62% of Latino men, 68% of Latino women. What we're seeing today, again, is Biden with about 59 among the Latino men, 64 among the Latino women. So the margin has shrunk decidedly, going from about 37, 40% now down to about a 20, 23% margin in terms of the Latino vote. Again, the success that President Trump had with the Latino voters in Florida, I think, is a key element of what he's doing. We also have to talk a little bit about, at some point, how he's doing with black men, which is a big discussion and been a big focus going back to the State of the Union conventions for the Trump campaign, hoping even recently with some of these rappers coming into the White House, embracing the president, that he could sway black men to come with him. But, again, it's really about black women who have turned out, and they've been strong for Biden in the states that we've seen so far. 92% in Virginia, 94% in Georgia, 95% in North Carolina, 93% in Florida. But it's the strength of black women that it seems to me is pushing what Rick Hume is talking about with the differential. You see more non-white women pushing towards Biden.
Okay, to Carl Robin here. Carl, your thoughts on what we're seeing develop here tonight in Florida?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, of full disclosure, I think one of the big issues here is voter registration. I say full disclosure because I was involved in a nationwide voter registration program in 13 states that allow online registration. Think about this. In 2016, there were a total of
in the early afternoon and then went back to Pennsylvania. So Ohio at the moment still has a lot of vote to tally. And I would make the case, guys, that you can dribble around this map here in Ohio too and find good news for Donald Trump in the offing and find good news for Joe Biden as well. Here's one. I mentioned this earlier. This is Delaware County. These are the suburbs of a growing Columbus, Ohio, just to the north. This is where our friend John Casey lives, by the way. You see these numbers for Joe Biden? This is what I would, Martin, you mentioned the suburban vote, how we're tracking that right now. This is where you find it. Joe Biden by 10 points over Donald Trump. You got a lot of votes in for that county right now. You see how it was split 4 years ago? If you're the Trump team, you don't want to see this kind of result right now in 2020. But a few more counties to follow in here. These are largely rural, right along the Ohio River. So I would expect now this to tighten very soon as we look. Let me just pop back in there. Sorry, there it is. I would expect this number to tighten over the next hour or two as the in-person votes are cast and tabulated that came into Ohio today, again, sticking there 5%. I don't know what the probability meter says in Ohio right now, but I imagine it's pretty close.
Let's go. We mind popping into Georgia. And,
Okay.
Yeah. We had that delay in Fulton County, and that is right around Atlanta. That is really a place that Biden has to win big. Right now, Donald Trump's up in the overall vote. Where are you sitting? What are you looking at?
Here's Atlanta right here, right? Fulton County. It stretches well into the north here. And we got a lot of votes to tabulate here between Biden and Trump and Fulton County. I pop out here in Cobb County. Joe Biden with the lead about 2-1 right now. Still some votes out there in Cobb County. Pop over here to DeKalb. DeKalb County is not going red. I can tell you that. It is a deep blue county just east of the city of Atlanta. And so very few votes right in from DeKalb County. Pop up to Gwinnett. Numbers are starting to get higher here, 2-1 for Joe Biden. But
and then 2016?
2016, specifically in Gwinnett, it was 53-47. That was the margin from 4 years ago. Fulton County, that was a clear winner for Hillary Clinton. Pop over here to DeKalb. I just mentioned this. She got 80% of the vote in 2016. She's got a long way to go here. But all these counties around Atlanta, Georgia, that's where the Democrats are going to pick up a lot of votes, Joe Biden, tonight. And we'll see how the rural area fills out.
Good stuff. We're going to dig down with you in all these counties, the big states, and we are getting ready for some big calls, 39 seconds away from the next poll closings. And this includes a number of states and a number of possible calls that also affect the balance of power potentially in the U.S. Senate. Remember, we are tracking not only the presidential race, but who controls the U.S. Senate, which is a major question.
Yep, we know Mitch McConnell has secured his seat in Kentucky, but we're waiting for a lot of big states to come in. Georgia, as we mentioned, is probably not going to be known this evening, but places like North Carolina, where Tom Tillis has been in a tight race against Cal Cunningham, is one we're going to be watching for, hopefully over the course of tonight or the next couple of days, as we get ready to make the next set of race calls. And it is now 9 p.m. on the East Coast, and the polls have just closed in 14 states across the country. Several of these are considered crucial battlegrounds for whoever will win the White House. Let's start tonight with Arizona, a state that could make or break President Trump's bid for a second term. Although the president spent the last 8 months trailing Joe Biden in Arizona's pre-election polls, he did manage to close that gap in the campaign's final days. Still, as of this moment, our decision desk has no decision to announce on the Grand Canyon state.
Nor can we make a call in Texas. Democrats have been trying to turn Texas blue for several presidential cycles. A win by Joe Biden tonight would obviously devastate Trump's campaign. The Trump campaign thinks they can pull that out in Texas, but it might be close.
And there's the upper Midwest, which played such an important role in President Trump's upset victory over Hillary Clinton back in 2016. 3 states from that region are up for grabs at this hour, which Democrats are headed in all 3 at this moment, according to the Fox News voter analysis, although it's too early to project the winners. In Wisconsin, where pre-election polls favored Joe Biden, although it should be remembered that they incorrectly showed Clinton winning 4 years ago.
Michigan, where President Trump barely squeaked a victory, then candidate Trump in 2016, and Minnesota, where Trump narrowly lost in 2016, and they invested some time in Minnesota this time around. We can, however, project that President Trump will beat Joe Biden in Kansas based on our voter analysis tonight.
And the Republican president will also defeat his Democratic challenger in the state of Louisiana. In Nebraska, we have 2 states that does not use a winner-take-all method for eligible votes. They're too early to project a presidential winner in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which represents the last electoral vote.
Remember, Maine's the other one. We still haven't called that other congressional district there either. Similarly conservative Wyoming, President Trump will rack up another easy victory there. And the story is the same in North Dakota, where the president comes out on top. And unsurprisingly, Trump also wins South Dakota.
In New York, the Fox News decision desk can project that Joe Biden will cruise to an easy victory over President Trump in a place that he used to call his hometown. He calls Florida home now. Biden will also win the state of Colorado, according to our decision desk there, but too early to project a winner in New Mexico, where Biden enjoyed strong support in pre-election polling.
All right, let's turn now to the Senate races, where polls have just closed. The first state, Colorado, where our decision desk can now project that Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper, the former governor there, will oust Republican Senator Cory Gardner in the first Senate flip of the night. Remember, Democrats need 4 net, or 3 in the White House to take over control. This is 1 net in the Democrats' column. Another closely watched Senate race is the special election in Arizona, where Republican Senator Martin McSally faces a strong challenge from Democrat Martin Kelly, a former astronaut. Kelly currently has a lead over McSally, but again, it's too early to call that.
Similarly, Michigan Senator Gary Peters, a Democrat, is ahead of Republican John James, although it is too early to project a winner in that race.
Finally, Fox projects that Republicans will keep Senate seats in Nebraska and Wyoming. Made it through that one.
Yeah, that's a long list.
That's
We got a lot of information in there. I mean, obviously, some of those races President Trump has spent a lot of time on. In Michigan, pulling for John James, a veteran who has run before in the state of Michigan, running again now. Gary Peters giving him a run for his money. That one, as we said, too close to call.
And really, Michigan, where it goes on the presidential, as you look at the race to 270, it's now 129 to 94. How Michigan and the presidential race fares there could affect that Senate race very closely. Let's just talk for a second. Cory Gardner losing to John Hickenlooper, Chris. Gardner was one of the most vulnerable senators out there. Colorado is purplish, leaning blue. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. There are about 9 toss-up races, but there were 2 that looked likely to flip. One was Alabama, Doug Jones against Tommy Tuberville. And interestingly enough, we haven't called that. Everybody thought that was likely to go to the GOP. We haven't called it yet. Not to say it won't happen. And then the other one was leaning Democrat, was the incumbent Republican Cory Gardner in Colorado against the former governor, 2-time mayor of Denver, 2-time governor of Colorado, failed presidential candidate in this cycle, John Hickenlooper. So assuming that Doug Jones does lose, we're exactly where we were at the beginning of the night, which is a 53-47 majority for the Republicans. They need to pick up 3 more seats, flip with 3 more Republican seats, and win the White House, so that you'd have Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker, or 4 net to take over the Senate. A couple of things. I've been in touch with the Biden campaign. They are, although we haven't called it, they're waving the white flag of defeat in Florida. They think that Florida is gone, accentuating the positive. The best case of it, they say that they very much underperformed among Cuban Americans. They think that the president's socialism, Democrats, Biden allegation stuck. But what they're saying is there are not a lot of Cuban Americans outside of Florida, so they don't think that'll be an issue in other Hispanic communities. They say they're overperforming in Ohio, in the suburbs. You heard Bill Hemmer talk about around Columbus. They say in Cincinnati they're overperforming as well.
If you mention his name, as in the debate, we have to bring him in. Bill Hemmer. Bill Hemmer's at the board. Joe pull up Ohio. You can ask him a question.
Well, no, I just actually, can I tell you one thing, Bill? My son, Peter, has just sent me an email, and he says, does Hemmer really know all of those counties, or is he reading off a teleprompter? And I said, do not tug on Bill Hemmer's cake.
No, exactly.
Tell him I said hello too, Chris.
Yeah, but are you reading off a teleprompter, or do you really?
No, I'm just looking at this monitor right here, which shows me you actually. And you, listen,
Don't start pointing at various points in my
this is
face.
a perfect time to mention the race of 1876, where you and Rick covered that.
All right. Ohio.
Play nice. And Brett and I covered the election of 2000 in Tallahassee, and that's where Brett and I became friends for the first time.
That is true. You have another network.
We've got that on you guys, okay?
But all right, so let me ask you about the Biden campaign claims that they're overperforming in the suburbs of an area that matters a lot to you, Cincinnati. Is that true?
It is true at the moment, based on what I can see a little bit. I would actually buy that argument more so up here in Franklin County, which is Columbus, and up here in Delaware County, where I talked about a little bit before. It's a growing part of the state. Also a lot of farms too up in Delaware County too. But I can buy that part of the state a little more than I can the argument in Cincinnati. What I will tell you, Chris, however, so we are pop out here. We're 59% of the vote in Ohio, and this is Montgomery County. That is Dayton, Ohio. That is one of a few counties that the president flipped from 2016 to 2020. So what's happening in Dayton, Ohio? Joe Biden's got a clear lead, 60 to 38% right now, but the raw numbers still are a bit on the low side. We're going to get that up probably another double, I would say, in Montgomery County. I would also say, since you're talking about the suburbs of Cincinnati, this is Butler County, it's north of Cincinnati, the home of Miami University, Oxford, Ohio, class of 1987. So this is Donald Trump right now with 64% of the vote from 4 years ago. See the raw numbers right there, about 160,000. This is where we are now. We're about 110,000, so at least 50,000 votes are still outstanding. Trump's at 53.7. Just go back again, he was at 64.8. He could get there, but again, a lot of those votes right now outstanding would have to go to him. So I can buy that argument a little bit, Chris, I think, but so much of this, 41% of the vote, is yet to be.
All right, Juan, Dana, Britt, you're in the game here with Bill, so he's in. Go ahead.
I don't want to ask Bill a question. I do want to point something out about Colorado and Cory Gardner. I was always kind of wondering. I heard he was in trouble, and kind of knew that Colorado's trended blue for some time now. Listen to this number. In the state of Colorado, men versus women in the vote. Biden won the men vote 49 to 47, but listen to this number with women: 61-36. Biden over Trump. Now it's pretty hard for an incumbent Republican running with a guy at the top of the ticket who gets crushed that badly by the majority gender in our country to win re-election, and he did.
So who else has a question for Bill Hemmer at the board? It's ask
My
Bill.
son Peter does, but he's not here.
He's not here.
Peter's not here.
He doesn't get
Dana.
the Juan, what about it?
Peter can text me too, by the way.
Okay, I'll do that.
I'll get you on the hotline. The thing is about the Cory Gardner too is that he was like most bipartisan member there, and as you look across these states, if a Republican is going to lose, and you're looking at, you think there's going to be wholesale change. I don't really think so. John Hickenlooper was governor of Colorado, and I know Colorado is more of a reliably blue state now for Democrats, but it's still fairly moderate, and so there's that. I guess Bill, one of the things that I was wondering is, like in Colorado, how much we're talking about the suburban vote a lot, and I don't know if we can see that on
Can't
the
really
map
see
there.
it just yet. It really hasn't filled in just yet.
Well, that's a terrible question then.
That's okay.
I'll do better next time.
How about North Carolina, like Charlotte, Mecklenburg? All
I
that?
think this is really interesting, guys. You have about 22% of the votes still to be tallied here. Joe Biden's sitting in a pretty good spot at the moment. You mentioned Mecklenburg. This is Charlotte right here on the map. He's got a 2-1 lead right now. Fast math tells me about 500,000, about 500,000 votes there. So that's about the mark where we were last time around 2016. Just hold on to these percentages and watch where we are now. We're at 68.4%, a little better than Hillary Clinton did 4 years ago. But in a race in a state that was decided 4 years ago by, what was it, 3.5 points? Perhaps that makes a difference here in 2020. So pop in here, one more. Oh, this is Wake County, something we'll keep an eye on. Heavily Democratic, you get a lot of votes out there. Over here in Raleigh as well, you get a lot of votes there, some at 80%, but still some votes outstanding as we can see from 2016.
This is compared to like really expensive brand.
2000 as well. About 200,000 in Raleigh total votes from 4 years ago. Still have about 35,000 votes outstanding in 2020. Joe Biden's right at the mark where she was 4 years ago. Pop down here. I mentioned this when we came on the air a couple hours ago. It's Robeson County, one of 6 counties that President Trump flipped from Barack Obama from 2016. So this county here is largely rural and it's white, and the president's got 58% of the vote. Pretty good number there in that county. 2016, he was at 52.5. So what's going on out there? Is rural votes starting to come in? Is it starting to materialize? Remember, we were told and we were warned to tell our viewers, and we'll remind them yet again, that early on in the night, the numbers were going to skew blue, and the in-person votes would come in places like North Carolina, in places like Georgia and Florida. That seems to be a bit of a pattern we're seeing right now. At the moment, well, come back to 2020. This is too close to call, but you can see how it's starting to go more and more narrow.
I'd love to bring in Karl Rove and get a look at Texas and the vote that is coming in there so far, Bill. About 50% Joe Biden, 48%, 48.5% Donald Trump. It's close, but there's, by my read, it's about 41% of the vote. It could be a little bit higher than that. Let us know what you're seeing there, and let's see what Karl thinks about that.
Rove's out of my league, by the way. Go ahead.
Karl, what do you got? What that means, but I'm looking at the numbers. I've been playing with them. Right now, this lead is statewide is relatively close, about 105,000 votes. And you're right, about 40-some-odd% of the vote is still out. Bexar County, San Antonio is 88% in. Dallas is 81% in. Harris County is 82% in. Travis County, my home county, is 90% in. All of those are strong for Joe Biden. Tarrant County is 90% in. That's Fort Worth. And Trump leads there by 1,000 votes. So if you're a Democrat and you got 40-some-odd% of the vote out and the big cities are largely in, that 105 is going to disappear when Taylor County comes in, Abilene, when the East Texas, Piney Woods, Smith, Longview, others start coming in. If I'm looking at this, I'm happy if I'm in the Trump headquarters. I'm saying once again, it hasn't happened if I'm sitting in the Democratic.
Karl, what do you think the margin is in Texas right now?
105,000.
Right, but percentage-wise, what would that compute to over time with the next few months?
Oh, it's over the next couple hours, yeah. I think it's going to end up being a 3%, maybe 4% win for Trump.
Do you believe that's tighter than you expected?
Well, no, because we got a problem in the suburbs, and the problem that you're talking about in Ohio and some of what we've seen in other states, in North Carolina, Virginia, it's present in Texas. And look, one of the certainties of presidential politics is there are always changes. There is no continual certainty. No. West Virginia is now reliably Republican, used to be reliably Democrat. Other states, Kentucky and Arkansas, they used to be reliably Democrat. They're now reliably Republican. Things go both ways, and Texas has changed.
Do you think that calculation puts John Cornyn?
No, not at all. Cornyn has been consistently running ahead of the president in Texas. In fact, tonight I bet the big story inside Texas will be that the Republicans will keep control of the state house, even after tens of millions of dollars have been pumped into the state. There's a guy I've never heard of in Silicon Valley who spent $11 million in state house races, which means if you got 25 races that everybody was sort of looking at, $500 to $1 million in each of those from either Bloomberg and Barack Obama and Eric Holder, who had an effort involved in this, or the Silicon Valley guy and a bunch of others. Money that they poured into an attempt to grab control of the Texas House so they could control redistricting for the U.S. House of Representatives. That has to be done next year in our legislature is extraordinary. And you can understand why. I mean, we're a growing dynamic state that next year will gain 2 or 3 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives.
See, Brett, I told you knew it. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Never in doubt. Never in doubt.
There,
Right
he's
there,
got his scribbling. I want to go back to North Carolina really quickly because that seems like a race where Joe Biden, for all of the time that he put in there, and they had Kamala Harris down there, Joe Biden visited there. It seems as time goes on that he's expanding that lead.
North Carolina?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is getting tighter and tighter the more we talk, guys, frankly.